How do you do? Mr. Splumpy Lemley feels it would be a little unkind to present the
Sent this picture without just a word of
friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Alexander, a man of science who sought to create a man in his own image, without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two mysteries of the creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So, if any of you feel like you care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to, we warned you. Before we get into the real gooey, disgusting, fleshy, wet, left out for long enough for it to get capital M moldy meat of Amnesia, I first have to explain what exactly liminality is and the type of horror I'm talking about today. Horror is an art, and if done right, it can make people feel uneasy, uncomfortable, and if done perfectly, it can fully traumatize you. And while Amnesia does have a few jump scares, we're not gonna be talking about jump scares today. Even though sometimes they can be tastefully done, go watch the film Sinister if you want to see some real unnerving jump scares. Jump scares are not like horror. While the art of horror can leave you uneasy even after you've experienced it, maybe even getting nightmares because of it, it is supposed to make you uncomfortable with a very real reaction of terror, whereas jump scares are not that. Jump scares are a guttural reaction to something in front of you. It's not horror, it's just your body defending itself because it sees a threat in front of it. And jump scares are really easy to do while true horror is not. I'm not going to do one, but I definitely could. Besides, it's only the first Halloween video this month. I might have something jump scare related coming out, who knows, only time may tell. Liminality is a quality of being between two places or stages on the verge of transitioning. Somewhere new, but a more broad sense of liminality is what happens in a dream. In a dream, generally, you're somewhere that feels familiar but also off. Maybe there are other people in your dream, but maybe there's not a soul in sight. The other night, I had a dream I don't know if I'll ever recover from. While I was in the middle of playing Amnesia, I got a call from my mother telling me that my dad had died, and I needed to come home. I just didn't know how to feel. My whole life I've had, let's just say, a less than good relationship with my father. Growing up, he was an alcoholic and he was less than kind to me and my siblings. I initially hated him, but now I tolerate him. He's almost a decade sober now, and I am proud of him. I wish to one day repair our relationship, so I'm sure you can see how distraught I was when I got that phone call in my dream. So obviously I drove back to my parents' house 2 hours away, but once I got to my parents' house, I opened the door, and there was nothing. No one was there. I called out for my mom's dogs, Nandor and Laszlo, but there was nothing. I went up the stairs to check my parents' room, and nothing. No dogs, no people. The TV wasn't even on. So I checked my brother's room and nothing yet again. I exit his room and I see my door slammed shut. I was taken aback. Why my room? Why would they slam the door? A bit nervous, I slowly approach my door. I hear a slam in there. So I reach for the doorknob and I slowly open my door and there's nothing in there. This is impossible. I just heard banging, I thought. Feeling uneasy, I go into the kitchen and there was a note on the kitchen counter. So, assuming it was from my mom saying where they went, I read it. And it just said basement. So I walked to the basement door and down the stairs, but something was wrong. It was different. The bar was gone. It wasn't finished. It was brick. My sister's room door was gone. Which, to be fair, it hasn't been there for quite some time. A couple years ago, it fell off the hinges and we did a thing called Don't Put It Back On. But it was different. The doorway was gone completely. It was just an empty corridor. So I walked slowly down the corridor and eventually reached a door at the end of the hallway that should not exist. I opened the door and that's when I saw it. It was my dad turning my mom into one of the horrible creatures from Amnesia. I was horrified. I wanted to run and scream, but I was frozen. And that's when my dad looked back at me and smiled before saying two words that will haunt me for the rest of my life. Welcome home. And then he charged at me and I woke up in a cold sweat. So, yeah. Amnesia's horror and use of well-timed scares gave me a nightmare that I am sure to never forget. Liminal spaces are a phenomenon on the internet. I'm sure you've seen a liminal space once or twice by now. And liminal spaces are images of rooms that feel nostalgic and like you've been there, but when in reality, you haven't. It's a shared feeling with thousands of other people, and Super Eyepatch Wolf actually has a really good video on liminal spaces where he goes more in depth on them without the horror aspect before diving into what makes liminal space so unnerving. And it'll be linked in the description because liminal spaces fascinate me, but that's not really what we're talking about today. We're talking about specifically how liminality can affect horror and how you feel. And oh no, did I just write a 5.5 minute intro to a video on Amnesia: The Dark Descent? Ah, fuck me. No, I didn't want to do this again. I swear to God. Before we talk about the main game, we must first discuss our antagonist, Alexander of Brennenburg. Alexander was banished from the dimension he was from a few centuries ago. Though it is not known the exact year, it is believed it was during the 16th century, where he found a burnt-down Prussian castle that he decided was the perfect place to rebuild in order to return to his dimension. So he restored the castle, where he masqueraded himself as a baron from the 16th century till 1839. The game begins with our protagonist, Daniel. No, not that one. Yeah, that one. He wakes up in a Prussian castle, not remembering how or why he got there, with a note in his pocket basically saying, "You have to kill the estate's master, Alexander." Amnesia is one of the most interesting horror games I've ever played. Its use of very few jump scares, instead assuring you that you're alone and then subverting your expectations completely. You spend the first 30 minutes to an hour exploring the castle, and apart from the wind opening a couple doors, the castle is empty. Until this happens. Ooh, fun! Isn't this a fun and lighthearted video? Again! Side note, right after that happened, I heard a noise in my kitchen, and when I went to go look, there was nothing there, and then I heard a crashing sound in my bedroom. So I went in there to investigate, and turns out it was my fucking cat. You continue down the castle's dimly lit corridors, where you eventually come across the foyer, where the shadow is taking over, and you need to find the key to the laboratory. So you journey through all your rooms, and eventually you find the key you need to get into the laboratory, where you can make an acid that is used to destroy the shadow where you need to get. But the ingredients aren't in the lab, no, they are sprawled around in the different rooms of the foyer. Once you get all the ingredients and pour it on the yucky, meaty shadow, and you can proceed to the next area, that's where things get going. You walk down the hall into the refinery, where you find this guy walking around. This is a gatherer. They're Alexander's helpers. After making your way through the refinery, you're eventually met with the cellar archives, where there's an invisible monster in the water you're in. If you move at all, it will follow you and kill you. But I figured out if you just crouch and move slowly in the water, it can't hear your movement. So once you make your way through the cellar and out of the water, you're met with the main room, where you find a broken elevator and you find out the item you need to fix the elevator is in the bunker. Now, this is where the gatherers become an actual threat, stalking your every move. If you make too much noise, you will die. But eventually you make your way through it and collect the elevator's rods you need to fix the elevator, and go on a little ride. You're now in a jail, almost to the end of the game. You just gotta keep pressing forward, where you eventually meet one Agrippa, who asks you to make a special tonic to save him before you put together an orb you need to proceed to the end of the game. You also need to find all the pieces of the orb in these little torture rooms where you essentially figure out that in order for Alexander to perform his ritual, he had to torture and kill townspeople. You make the tonic, assemble the orb, and it's on to the last area, where Alexander is performing his ritual, and after his portal opens, you put Agrippa's head in the portal, and it kills you and Alexander. But in the game's end, you're in the afterlife, and you can hear Agrippa asking for mercy for you. Roll credits. There's 3 other endings in which you get taken over by the shadow, one where you stop the ritual and escape the castle, and one where you let Alexander finish his ritual and you die. This game made me feel something I haven't felt since I was a kid. Genuine, true-to-life fear. I will never forget what Amnesia made me feel in playing it. If you watched this video, thank you for joining me. If you have any comments, please comment down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!